Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Word from Tomorrow podcast. I'm Case Aiken, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host Keith Lettinen.
Hello, everybody.
We are doing it one more time.
Right. It's one more time, one final time.
Yep. I mean, not one final time for us because we do have
Yeah,
it. We're going to do a wrap up for
postscript.
the series with Derek Robertson, uh,
Yeah.
which we're very excited about. But we're also really excited to dig into the final chapter in the Transmetropolitan epic, as it were. And so to have that conversation, we are joined by a different Derek. We are joined by Derek Van Dyke.
Hi, how's it going, everybody?
It is going well, Derek. I am so excited to have you on for this one.
Yeah, look, always good to collab with the certain POV folks. Always good to collab with you, especially Case. We kill it. And man, the idea of going back to Transmetropolitan right now of all times. I kind of knew you were cooking a little bit, and then I started my reread, and it was like, oh yeah, this feels good. This feels good to read right now. So I was telling you, I've been practically vibrating since I actually read this final volume over the weekend to prepare for this. Because I reread from the beginning again. So, but held that last volume off because I wanted to be
Wow.
fresh. I wanted my powder dry when I came in. So,
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and so listeners should know that when we first started putting this together, and I reached out to you because there was sort of like an element of I was like there are certain people that I figure probably went through a transmet phase, and
you called that one.
yeah, I guessed that, and so you immediately jumped on volume 10, and I was like, yeah, all right, cool, yeah,
Yeah,
we've got the finale
gotta
locked
come
in.
in for the big finale.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So this gets into the question that we ask all of our guests, which is, what is your experience with Transmetropolitan?
So, actually, my experience with Transmetropolitan, I read, probably far too young to be honest. No, definitely far too young to be honest with you. Would have been late middle school, so the series had been complete for a little while, if I remember correctly. It was one that actually my dad recommended to me. My dad is a huge comic book geek and also a huge Hunter S. Thompson fan. Like I also like I grew up reading a lot of like Hunter S. Thompson, Kurt Vonnegut, like the weirdos of American literature, right, of modern American writing. So it only seemed natural. But I gotta admit, I at that age and with probably a shallower understanding of like Thompson's impact on like journalism, pop culture, his own sort of self mythology. Beyond like this is a weirdo that my dad really likes. I don't think I really it really all sunk in. So I haven't reread since the mid 2000s. So it's been quite a while. So it was definitely very like I hadn't thought about Transmetropolitan in a long time until you brought it up, and I immediately saw Spider Jerusalem's grinning face poking out of the darkness, and it was like, oh yeah, this will be a fun one to go back to. And I definitely think I found kind of a new appreciation, both as just somebody who's older, a little more well read, a little more politically savvy, a little bit more familiar with like Hunter S. Thompson and Warren Ellis and Ellis's particular stylings, knowing how to kind of translate that hyper reality. It's been a good time.
Yeah, so we normally at the end of these episodes ask like, are you going to continue on with the series? And for you, like you're coming in where like there's no option. Like for
Yeah.
you to you either you did the homework or you did the Cliff Notes version. But either way, you ended up at the finale. So
I guess I could do a buttload of drugs and just dream up a few more chapters. That would be very in tone with the series, but that's not really my bag. So none of the hard stuff.
no, unfortunately or fortunately, because like there is the element, and we'll talk about it when we get to the end of this. Like, is it like how effective is this as a complete story? And I would argue that like while we could do a few more one shots, like the broader story, we I mean, we certainly come to a conclusion here.
Yep, yep. Inclined to agree. This feels wrapped up. I got to admit, I don't know necessarily how much of the entirety of Transmetropolitan was outlined before it started. I don't know how much of this was kind of made up as it went. I mean, it's 60 issues, so it's not inconceivable that we had, Ellis had an end goal in mind. But I mean, it feels like we hit the target, and this is your close the book. We're good.
Yeah, I think that there's certainly an element of when you're on a book like this of making adjustments on the fly to sort of cater to like what is appealing to you as a writer as you go, even if you do have like the whole thing sort of mapped out. As we get into it, I think that you can see the spots where he's clearly writing it as he goes here, versus the spots where I do think that he had a bigger plan in mind. But why don't we get into our conversation about the final volume by way uh, of sort of doing one last recap to explain where we are in the story. So Keith, why don't you tell the listeners at home what's been going on in the first 9 volumes of Transmetropolitan?
Yeah, I'll quickly sum up 9 volumes of a comic. I am so excited because for the first time, I know everything you know. So I'm very excited about that. So here we go. We're in a dystopian future, or not dystopian, cyberpunk future, if you will. And rogue journalist Spider Jerusalem, rebelling against the man, no matter who he is, finds himself basically against an evil the likes of which he's never encountered before. Our current president, the Smiler, who he inadvertently helped get into office, kind of. Combined with his filthy assistants, they are trying their best to use journalism and cartoonish violence to bring the man down. When we last checked in with them, um, Spider and his associates rebounded after quite a big fall from grace, and took a shot at the president, took a final shot at the president to try to bring him down with controversy that they were able to confirm, leading to a pretty serious uh, cliffhanger, I guess I would say, at the end of the last volume, where the Smiler's smile finally fell, and now we're in the end game. So
Pretty apt summation of everything that we've been through so far. Um, yeah, so we like we're at the point now where like Spider has made his big play. Um, and now we're seeing the Smiler's rebuttal and can Spider weather the storm. So we're gonna open up with part one of Headlong, continuing the 3 act structure or the 3 issue structure that we see throughout this book, where arcs of 3 and then with like one shots or smaller arcs after that. So yeah, so let's open the book with a masked goon holding a gun facing the camera with flames illuminating him behind him. Visuals that are very apt for the conversation today.
Yeah, definitely this first, 3 issue kind of arc. I mean, being at the point that we're at, where we've got, masked ICE agents, causing mayhem, to put it lightly, in Minnesota, knowing people who are caught up in that chaos, the fear of how that may or may not spread, to our own home cities. I mean, this section of the city beginning to be placed under martial law definitely hits very different.
we've been trying to shout out covers too, and this is a Gene Ha cover, which is amazing. Gene Ha rules.
Oh,
So.
yeah.
Oh yeah. Good call on that one.
We open on that, and literally, it's kind of interesting because this might be the first volume that I can think of that takes up immediately after the other one ends. You know what I mean? Like we're literally right in it. So,
It's definitely very uncommon for this series. Yeah.
yeah, 100. There's a bunch of time skips in the series, so yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was trying to look up the name of the other guy from The Hole because I just can't remember him.
The one that just disappeared into
Yeah.
nothingness, and I pointed it out.
Yeah, we're seriously, I can't. He doesn't even show up on the Wikipedia page.
And it's funny because they gave him like a badass moment and everything. of him being like, "Let's do this together," and then he just disappears forever.
Right. Yeah. Uh, because it just completely doesn't matter for
I
the
can't
remainder of the
remember
story.
the last thing that he did before he disappeared.
He had
Literally
sex with
that.
Kay.
Oh yeah, that's right.
No.
Yeah, because she got really horny about the readership numbers for the
That's
whole.
right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yes, and then never shows up again.
Never shows
Yeah.
up again. Yeah, because they
It's
realize that like it's an irrelevant duplicate character.
it's John Nkrumah. I found on Wikipedia. Sorry.
Yeah. Anyway, so yes, so this is one of those spots where like there's a little bit of funkiness in terms of Ellis had the whole bit where Spider's like we are in a state of martial law because of the nature of the reclamation zone, and now we're panicking about martial law being imposed upon them, and it's just one of those spots where I feel like Ellis was sort of like talking it out in the actual text of the book and then sort of had to like backtrack to be like, oh, but here's the dramatic scene that I actually want to do of it, which is part of that whole, is Ellis like sort of winging it as he goes versus like does he have a thesis? He definitely has a thesis, but I think he's like figuring out like some of the details.
It felt like the drama of the moment for Spider and Chana and Yelena, of the weight of like, oh shit, this is for real martial law
Yeah.
came at a delay, when it kind of felt like, yeah, like I recognize that meaningfully this is a bit of an escalation, but this is the reaction that we should have been having several issues ago. This is an issue, the level of reaction I felt like we should have been having. But you're right, like it's kind of like they needed to set up the reclamation zone. They needed to set up, but they needed the big oh shit moment to be the way you kick off the finale. It couldn't happen earlier, and it's slightly awkward in terms of placement. But I mean, it does communicate that like, this is it. All the cards are on the table. We are hitting that last stretch. And there's not going to be. We've had a lot of times where Spiders come kind of toe to toe with the Smiler, and they've kind of exchanged insults and kind of played each other a little bit. But this is the like, we're not backing out this time. We're not just going to walk away with, yeah, I'll be seeing you later kind of, tense words.
And it's, and again, it's placed now because they were so focused on getting the story out, even though this whole threat of martial law was circling them, because that's what they do, right? They get the story out. Well, the story's out now. Now they just got to survive, and they look around and go, "Oh shit, what did we do?" Basically,
Right.
we need, yeah. And it also, of course, storytelling wise, sets the stakes for the final arc. It's saying like, this is our problem now. Like the story's out there. Like there's more stories to come, obviously, but like now it's survival. Now it's living long enough to see him fall, basically.
Yeah, and I love how we convey some of the danger of the president by way of the like the news feed that's going on, and how like we just get to a point where he just stops and goes completely dead silent for multiple panels, and then goes, and now sports.
There's not a lot scarier than watching a sociopathic politician whose entire shtick is like the facade, to watch the facade just kind of break and realize that it's been discarded because it's just not needed anymore. It is once again like a sign of like we have crossed the Rubicon.
Yeah, and so we get Spider sort of unraveling that detail, explaining to his assistants, to Kay, to Liesel, like what the situation is, and getting increasingly heated about it all. When finally, after a few attempts to sort of say this, Liesel is like, I don't want to go anywhere with you. And she says that like, oh, you didn't care about me after you got your story. Like you didn't have to treat me like a hooker.
That's a line. That's a good line. Because like you understand obviously where Spider's coming from, that like the stakes are here. Yes, the purpose of talking to Liesel was to get the story, but at the same time, like from that one very small individual perspective, yeah, she just got used again. and put in danger, from her perspective over something that doesn't matter to her. I love that line. You didn't have to treat me like a hooker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whew, gut punch.
Made me, I mean, I really liked her, but I mean, the it sounds the jaded part of me is like the story doesn't need her anymore. You know what I mean? Like, and so as a
I mean, and that's
writer,
how Spider. I mean, like,
yeah,
I don't think that he's without sympathy.
no, not at all.
But very much it's kind of like, all right. And I mean, Shannon, right?
Yeah.
Basically giving her directions. It's like, yeah, she can be a distraction. That's all that she's worth at this point. If we want to get out of here, it's us or her, maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because it's not even Spider who is okay with it. Like he's surprised when Shannon's like let her go. Like he's trying to explain like no, if you go you'll die.
Yeah.
And it's Shannon being the heartless one because she's doing the pragmatist job there. Like
she's the bodyguard.
right. And kicking into high gear. Now, I mean, does it suck that we see like how bad it goes for Liesel? Yeah, like we're in the end game. Like there's going to be some casualties in this whole situation.
Yeah. It
Yeah,
establishes stakes, right? Like, decent people are going to die, from this. I mean, we've been seeing that somewhat through the entire series, but this feels very personal. This feels, I mean, you get to see Spider like react kind of to her getting hit. Although I can't really tell how much of it is a reaction, how much of it is like the timing of one of his episodes coming on immediately after that happens.
Yeah, I
no,
mean, like,
yeah,
yeah.
good.
Is it him? Is it supposed to thematically resonate, or is it just a coincidence? Like, it's hard to say. I mean, I think that Ellis is trying to show the damage, uh, in conjunction with it. Yeah, I don't know. Keith, you were about to say something?
No, I was just kind of like agreeing, like, yeah, I don't know if it's like a coincidence or it could be the triggering of it, that caused him, what happened to actually like maybe trigger the brain, trauma can cause that to worsen, is what I was kind of thinking of. I will say that, like you said, there are going to be losses in the climax of a story like this. So you're right, not everybody's going to make it out, and we'll talk about it later. I like Liesel, but there's another character I was more worried about later, and I'm glad that of the two of them, this is the one that we, lost.
So Spider has an episode as they try to go as we referenced. He has a nosebleed. He seems to become comatose in the front seat, while Shannon tries to drive away with Kay and Yelena in the back seat. As they're going, we see that Liesel gets picked up, and they start like the cops or whomever start kicking the shit out of her. Meanwhile, a car is in pursuit of Spider and the crew, and Shannon has to do some aggressive driving to sort of avoid the whole situation. One car pulls up alongside, and Spider says, "I bought two guns one day." And this is another spot where I'm like, I don't like it feels like we are placing weird emphasis on scenes, because we saw Spider buy two guns. We saw him also throw away two guns. And when like him buying more guns is not weird. But the fact that he phrases it this way makes it seem like the one time that we saw him buy a gun, because we talked about how then when he shot the guy in front of Yelena and Yelena like freaks out about it, where it's like no, but he's already killed people in front of you with guns. Like this is not news.
It also doesn't totally, because like the guys in the car aren't like, it's okay, he doesn't have a gun because he's only bought guns twice and thrown them both away. Like,
Right.
it's a line that doesn't really work for anybody but the audience, and only if the audience was really paying attention to that not super like called upon detail. um the timing's very Bugs Bunny, right? Like,
I
yeah,
love you quoting Bugs Bunny or bringing up Bugs Bunny
yeah, I
because we've
just,
been saying that the entire run.
I mean, a little bit. Spider Jerusalem operates on like plot armor Bugs Bunny logic a
Yeah.
little bit, right? And like the sooner you accept that, the better. That like things work the way that they work because Spider is the protagonist, and he does get to be the biggest piece of shit at the moments where it's needed. So like, yes, he gets to be comatose in the seat, and then the driver gets to look at him, and then he gets to give the grin, and oh shit, it about to go down, and
Yeah.
it sure does, because that's what the timing demands. That's definitely a thing that took me some getting used to rereading Transmetropolitan, was that, like, man, I mean, this is a wackadoo series in general, but Spider really just kind of gets the whim of, like, what does the timing say for this moment? And it's a twisted, coked up version of the Roger Rabbit. I'm gonna switch cartoon bunnies of the Roger Rabbit. Like, I can only do it because it's funny, right? Like, he can only come out of the coma and shoot the dude when it's the perfect moment.
Yeah, we've talked about like some of the violence being cartoonish in a way where, like the scene where Spider gives a body count for like how many people he's killed, and he's like claims it's all in self-defense. It's like, well, those are definitely not the times where he's like just blown up a bar or
Yeah,
anything like that.
right.
Like,
Like the first issue.
right, exactly. We're definitely not counting like the times where we've seen things that are definitely like fatal actions that he's done. But they were funny.
Yeah.
It's only the times where it's serious that they count for the purposes of like the actual story.
Well, and we talk about the Looney Tunes timing of, him waking up from a coma at that exact moment. But like, I feel like that, well, it's not I feel like that energy is clearly intentional, because as soon as he shoots up the guys in the other car, they crash into the Satan's Army recruitment center, and the like poor guy at the reception desk is like, oh shit, or whatever, before he gets hit, and then they crash into the statue of Satan, and then the head falls and crushes the car. Like, it's so Looney Tunes.
Yep.
I will point out that guy has a tag that says Teresa. Just saying.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like an evil nun.
But yeah, Teresa's very funny of all the names.
Yeah. Yeah, and then it cuts to what rude people. So, uh, yeah, definitely a cartoonish bit of violence right there. And then we cut back, and this is actually a good spot here where Spider's brain damage is useful for us getting exposition. Where it's like, okay, so where are we going? It's like, oh yeah, Yelena's dad's house. Okay, great, cool.
And then also kind of like ending off the issue with the whole, like, all right, it's time to hit send on the file. I've got limited time. I'm bad with words. It's now or never. Let's get this put together. Great cliffhanger point for the issue. I imagine if you were reading this on an issue by issue basis, this is an evil place to leave off before waiting for next month's issue.
This was a wild time because at this point I was reading this issue by issue, and yeah, I mean, like the previous arc barely ends before going into this one. It's such a serialized story at this point. But yeah, it was intense just getting to each one and being like, okay, where's the next one? Give me that hit. But yeah, so Spider directs Kay to release a file onto the whole, which we get a little bit of a tip off that the passphrase to activate it is "I was cloned," which is of course a reference to the telepresence system that they used for him to actually like go and interview Callahan's wife. But that's what we find out next time as we move on to the next issue. And yeah, we've got another Gene Ha cover. It's this one, there's less going on in the sense that like, okay, we've got like a cool shot of his like sunglasses reflecting like interesting signage, but it's a close up of his face, so it's a nice cover. But
Yeah.
I mean, I like the framing with the glasses and the reflection. I think
yeah,
that's
it looks
good.
cool. Yeah, it looks cool. Yeah. We open the next issue also with armed guards pointing at the camera, and this we get a repeated shots of just soldiers marching through a city, just and the citizenry being like, "Yo, the reclamation zone's over there, but they're going everywhere they need to," and man, talk about stuff that just feels exactly like the news today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's weird? The comic panel of the big, like, it's like the carrier or whatever it is going down the street. Weirdly, that's the thing that I think hit me the most. mostly because so I'm from and live in Louisville, Kentucky, and I worked downtown at the local news station when the Breonna Taylor protests were going on, like 2 blocks from my workplace. So I was there through all of it, and going in and out past like National Guard, Humvees and shit. And for some reason, the carrier, like that and it's obviously a little different from like a National Guard Humvee, but like that thing on the street was the thing that kind of was like the flashback to that. It was very like, oof, yeah, I'll shake that little bit of like baby PTSD off, huh?
Yeah, it certainly speaks to like the
Right.
militarized police that we are seeing these days. Like
Mm-hmm.
those kind of vehicles being deployed on American streets is where it is so creepy.
Yes, yes, and I mean, every time this happens, I mean, it's unwarranted. Again, it was unwarranted in all of the Black Lives Matter protests in 2020. It was unwarranted. It's obviously unwarranted now. None of this ICE shit worth a shit. And I think I like that the punks, in the comic, kind of smack talking a little bit, feels very pointed.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, and hopefully the guys that they were smack talking didn't respond with violence, but we know all too well that that might have actually been the case.
Yeah, I guess we don't get to see. So
Right.
Yeah, we cut back to Spider and crew arriving at Yelena's house. Kay is surprised at how opulent the Rosini estate is.
it's a nice house. It's a
Uh,
surprisingly mundane gate for that nice of a house.
yes, well, who knows? There could be lasers. So Kay finally gets the file sent out, and they come out of the car, and we get Yelena's dad again with different facial hair. Every single time we see him, he's got different facial hair. It's just a thing about the book. But he's saying martial law for God's sake. And this is again me just noting that like they were talking about this all of them together like 3 issues ago.
Yeah, and knew that the reclamation zone, like it was a like an asterisk on that was just a technicality, and that a snap of fingers it would expand.
Yeah.
So
Uh, but like I said, I think that it's just they are forced into a spot where it's like, well, we need these are the dramatic beats. We need to focus on that right now. Uh, so the gang all goes inside. Spider picks up the cat, and the cat scratches Spider in the face, and that surprises him. Um, I, I I don't really have like a good theory for why the cat does this, besides that Spider is just starting to lose it, and this is a downer moment for him.
I think it's hard to tell. I kind of read this as like a comedic beat, like inserted to break up, because there's kind of a lot of that. And I mean, this is proceeded with him through the line of like, you've got, come here, cat, amuse me. And then it kind of, I can't tell if it's a scratch or the impact drawing kind of almost makes it look more like it's a little bit of a bitch slap. And
That's
then
true.
of
We don't see
course,
claws. Yeah.
yeah, the assistants laugh, and like snicker at him as soon as it's done. But also, like, I don't know that this is a moment that needed like a snicker moment to break it up, and it doesn't read very directly as like a comic relief moment either. So I'm not the firmest on that interpretation. It's just the best I got.
I kind of read it as like, because he's losing, part of who he is. Maybe the cat doesn't necessarily recognize him in that moment or something like that. Some kind of instinctual thing. That's what I kind of read it as, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, certainly a moment that could be read a few different ways. Because Derek, I don't disagree with with that interpretation that it was supposed to be a comedic beat. Like looking at it, I'm like, oh yeah, I could see it being a comedic beat. But in my head, like being a person who like loved his cats, and like you know the thought of a cat not loving you back is like that's such a heartbreaking moment to me.
Yeah. See, I've never and like I'm gonna say something. I was gonna say, as somebody who's never had cats, but I want to preface: I like cats. I'm not an anti-cat person. I'm not one of those. But I've never had cats, so I mostly know cats as a thing that I hope they like me and they don't smack me. I mostly know them as things that want to smack me. So I guess cats smacking things and smacking people is kind of my normal expectation. So it's kind of interesting the way that like your different life experience can kind of color the way you read that scene. Don't you love media criticism and media analysis?
Yeah.
Don't you love the eye of the beholder? It's so good.
Yeah, that makes it makes a lot of sense, the different perspectives right there.
Yeah.
Because I'm such a sim for animals, that I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
I am definitely more of a dog person, but I don't mind cats. So
I like when I go to a pet store and there's a big fat kitty on a shelf somewhere just chilling. That's his job.
Yeah, but anyway, so Yelena's dad comes in and says like, "Your attention, please. Something is happening." And we see Judith Callahan and Keith. I think we were talking about this, and I was getting this scene in my head, where we actually see Mrs. Callahan. I don't think we actually see her earlier in the book.
I don't think so, because I remember hitting this
yeah,
point and being like, "Oh, is this um the interview that he got with her back then?" And I guess I at first did not recognize that this is specifically an unaired part clipped out from the rest of the interview that he did use.
Mhm.
So, because they did kind of, he gets all those interviews and they kind of do gloss over exactly how much of that got used, and you kind of jump to the piece already being out and everyone already being like, "Wow, yeah, that guy's a pedophile, crazy." Isn't it great that you have a society that cares when high-ranking people turn out to be pedophiles,
I know.
right,
and
right.
then they
With
actually kill themselves?
the bare minimum, like Jesus, man. Like, yeah. No, yeah, I do, yeah, I do think, yeah, this is the first time we saw her because I was trying to remember. We talked about that last time. I like that she has an eyebrow ring. I like that little
Yeah,
touch for a classic woman. I thought that was cool. So, yeah,
yeah, because
Very,
like
very Jackie Kennedy with an eyebrow ring. Yeah.
I
yeah.
exactly I was about to say that. But yeah, I mean, and like specifically like her complaint about the Smiler, it feels very Jackie Kennedy, but even more heartbreaking, where it's just like he sleeps around, and I wish he would even pretend to lie to me about it, because then at least it feels like you are trying to save my feelings in some way, but instead you don't even care enough to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he lies to everyone else. Like, why doesn't he just try to lie to me? I'm like, fuck, that hurt.
Yeah, so Spider confirms when Kay asks, like, is that the file I just sent out? That this is the one he got, and that he got it when he did the telepresence system earlier on in the book. And that he didn't release this portion because she seems so sad. And we're seeing the softer side of Spider Jerusalem right now, where uh,
A
he,
really human moment.
yeah,
Really like, yeah, a softer moment from somebody who takes refuge in being kind of heartless.
yeah. So he didn't release it because she was alive, and now that she's dead, it's all bets are off. So
Mhm.
he released that, and does a follow up by releasing the information that they got from Fred Christ. And so we get the audio from the beatdown session that we had in the last volume, with just pictures of Fred Christ going on, and it's cut together with shots of Mrs. Callahan, and then also shots of Liesel, and sort of just it's a lot of just like putting the pieces together. We get Fred's dialogue, which we've heard him say before, but then we're getting all the shots to sort of be like, okay, just in case we haven't been following, this is why everyone like should be pissed off at the Smiler. This is why he's a fucked up dude. And then it cuts to armed fucking thugs, just falling in on every single news outlet in the city.
Also, eerily prescient,
Didn't feel good.
uncomfortably prescient.
Didn't feel good.
Nope.
Like, First time I read this was before I really cared about journalism, and the second time I read this was after I'd spent 8 years working in local news. So, oof! What can I say but oof?
Yep. Yep. And then we've got this really nice shot where we've got all of these jackbooted thugs uh, uh, coming closing in on the SPKF studio, and then we cut to the White House but negative, and the arrangement of the shapes is so similar to to all of the I'm just gonna keep saying thugs from the shot before. It
The
like
like shot blocking is very similar, where like the head of and helmet of one guy in the upper left is very similar to the way that the tree blocks out that corner of the
exactly,
White
yeah.
House. Yeah,
Yeah.
really exceptionally good panel design here.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, then we cut back to Spider and the gang, and this is again one of those scenarios of like some of the drama by way of techno babble in this series doesn't necessarily hold up, especially now with like modern understandings of how like servers work. But you know, it's moments like these that are let's have some basic drama of like, okay, we're losing access to all the different hosting sites that we were using to keep the whole alive. Which yeah, sure, like makes enough sense if you're like literally living on like like identified servers. But you know, at this point, like the internet is so sprawling and crazy that I don't know. It wouldn't necessarily be as one to one like that. But it is a fun sort of element of the like they're slowly getting shut out of the of this whole thing. And oh wait, now we're getting a feed from like the university that's on like in the city. Um, and this is where we get another one of those like Warren Ellis Britishisms just in there, where Kate goes like, "Cheeky bastards! They've hacked the campus security cam system."
It's like you would not hear somebody say that in America
Right.
in any point in time. It's just not. That's quintessentially British.
Right. Uh, which it's so funny, like seeing this like British author trying to write like an American, and like an edgy Gen Xy kind of American at that. And anyway, so it turns out that that there's thugs in the university, and it's a bad look. Um, we get this like really terrifying shot of just like just row after row after row of armed thug just ready to assault students.
I mean, I think, the imagery of like Kent State, right,
Yeah.
is burned into a lot of Americans' minds, even people who were too young to be alive at the time that it happened, because that imagery and those like photos and videos became the pattern for this every time it would ever be portrayed fictionally. So like in one way, like, yes, the thugs closing in on like the campus protesters is like, it feels very prescient to today, right, where we're cracking down on speech on college campuses, especially where it's in protest of the current administration. And like, yes, it's leaning into the imagery of how we've always portrayed violence against like protests at a college campus. But I also think like Transmetropolitan is itself politically self-aware enough to know it is explicitly pulling from the Kent State shootings.
Yes, thank you for referencing that, because that is exactly what I was going to say next. So thank you for just reading my brain.
Same
Yeah,
brain cell.
Yeah.
it was just hanging over the whole thing. Like
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yes. So obviously the series is just extremely aware, and history just repeats itself like crazy. Is the just the thesis of this goddamn book. So we cut to the president's like press person, who it says that there will be no further briefings, and then says, "Listen, your presence here is a privilege, not a right," which feels very much like our current press room situation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Damn, it's almost like fascism's predictable.
Yeah, just a wee bit. Cut back to the campus, and it's getting heated. Spider asks if Kay is providing the feed out there, but it is like, no, it's currently on TV, so what's the point? Then it gets cut off, and that's when we start to see that all the news networks are being forced to cut off their feed of all the jackbooted thugs who are harassing students and also other people throughout the city. The media is entirely being shut down from revealing anything that is being done in the city at the moment.
Just like a complete blackout, and just yeah.
I do like the like flip through the completely vapid bullshit that's being aired instead of the news. I mean, obviously it's hyper exaggerated, but it is the common criticism of how toothless modern news can be. You know that they'll focus on fluff and ads. You know, over the important story that's happening right in front of all of us.
I like the one panel where it's like, next up, is Mother Nature a terrorist? It just feels like the smash cuts that I've seen of like Sinclair Broadcasting, like the conglomerate that has like bought up like all the local news,
Yeah,
and forced them to have like these like stupid right wing talking points, like
that they've got
uh,
to read verbatim. Yeah.
yeah.
I like that his name is Crom Stockley, which is just a fantastic. We came up with an anchor name, and that's it. That's what he was born to be. You can't be a Crom Stockley and be anything else.
Yep. So Spider ask Kay if they're able to get up, and like there's some more techno babble of like they're trying to jam it, but we're barely getting it through. And noting that with it up, that it's almost certain that like eventually the authorities are going to be able to trace it back to this estate.
Right, exactly. It's using, again, like you said, technobabble to set a time limit, to set stakes. But honestly, I don't think it worked for me because I was kind of like all this, like, oh, they're trying not only trying to hack us, but they're trying to block us out. There's no sign, or like there's no visible sign of overcoming any of this struggle. So it's kind of a struggle that really goes nowhere beyond the fact that eventually they do show up. You know what I mean? Not like
Right.
it's hard to show active hacking, you know what I mean, in a visual medium. Like it's
Yeah,
hard to
yeah,
like,
yeah.
so this
Well,
literally just like, I'm having a problem. You guys should worry. That's literally what's happening here. And I'm like,
yeah.
it's fine, but
To be fair,
yeah.
it's very Hollywood, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
100%.
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, and movies, it's an even easier time making hacking look engaging, and it's bullshit hacking in movies. So let
Yeah.
yeah.
alone,
No,
This is probably
definitely.
more
yeah,
realistic that it's the comic like the 2001 or 2002 era like speculative future writing equivalent of saying like, yeah, man, I can put our VPN through another VPN, but eventually they're gonna find us.
yeah.
You know.
Yeah,
Like keep
exactly.
in mind, this is a contemporary of Swordfish.
Yeah,
This is
yeah, yeah,
true.
yeah. Yeah, fair.
Yeah.
I wish this future's version of hacking looked like hackers because I would love that.
So this is another spot where we get Yelena's dad sort of showing off that he is very Spider-esque and that there is like something Electra complex going on.
Is he
Uh,
looking a little like little Vladimir Lenin to y'all, or am I the only one seeing that?
I was seeing him as like looking particularly Spider-ish.
I mean, I guess that's true. Yeah, I don't know. He looks very Lenin to me for some reason.
That Yeah, I mean, you saying that, I'm like, yeah, no, I see it
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
But I also see where you're probably right. I was probably supposed to be saying Spider this entire time, a little bit,
I mean, specifically the
especially with the
spot where he goes,
glasses.
well, where he goes, political fighting is a disease. I've had a long period of remission, but I'm still quite infected, like you. And he's
Yep,
wearing the glasses,
kind of
and
the
yeah,
obvious thing. Don't know why I didn't see that.
that's just my interpretation of it. But like, yeah, like particularly this page is the page where again a guy who has had different facial hair every time we've seen him comes across looking the most spider-ish in these like two panels right here.
Yeah, and literally putting them right next to each other, like close up. It's like drawing attention to the comparison, I think.
So we cut back to the campus, and the students are like putting stickers of the three-eyed smiley face stickers from the transient movement, um, and they're using that as the sign of their movement. Yelena goes, "What does that mean?" And Spider goes, "To them, I could guess." Like, which is true. Like, what does this mean to them all? And is it specifically because is this like Black Lives Matter to a degree, but for transients? Like,
Well, we've seen in the series that this sticker has come to symbolize Spider too. Like
yes,
people have been wearing the shirt. So I think this is a Spider thing, personally.
I think it's kind of the way I kind of read it. Like it definitely started with the transients. It has come to be very associated with Spider, and
Yeah.
I think by this point, it has simply become
Resistance,
yeah,
revolution.
like just a
Yeah.
punk symbol, right?
Yeah.
Of rebellion against the norms, the political norms.
Yeah.
So
I mean, and one of the protesters literally just looks like Spider. Like shaved his head weird and stuff, but is
yeah, but has
very
the
similar to Spider. Yeah.
three-eye
Yeah.
smiley like shaved out for his head. It's very
Yeah.
weird.
Exactly. Yeah.
the future hairstyles. But yeah, so they've got little makers or little printers that they're printing off these like the stickers and slapping it on the face of all these thugs. One of them on their heads up display, like it says possible threat, and like we get a zoom in on like on the hand like reaching for the printer, and he raises the gun, and that's where the issue ends.
Yeah. And then the next one opens
Pretty much exactly where you think
Yeah.
it's gonna.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, because I mean, we start the next issue and just immediately jump to here's the bloodbath.
Yeah.
Um, it is. I mean, we make all of our parallels right to kind of the political moment that we're in right now, and I'm sure just about any of us who have been watching, paying attention, worrying about the current political moment have worried about this exact thing happening in Minnesota, right? That like it just takes one jumpy idiot, one of these untrained clowns, to get a little fearful and trigger happy, and you end up with a Kent State shooting, a Boston massacre, you know. So again, like just the timing on going back and choosing this for a reread is
Yeah.
shockingly
Yeah.
prescient.
Yes.
Yes.
It felt that way when we started, and it has continued to be even more so as we have gone through. And I'm sure that as this is released, it will continue to be extremely apt.
Yeah.
Hey, who knows? By the time this is out, maybe everything will be better.
It could happen. It
I
could
mean-
happen tomorrow.
Yeah.
Certain things.
Recording this in February, everybody.
Yeah.
Yes. Spider watches this whole scene, like they all watch this whole scene of the thugs just opening fire on the students, and particularly at the one guy, but like we see them like open fire on a bunch of other students. So they're just gunning down just fucking kids.
With the one panel in the middle of it of the TV station going, and now on sports, like
Right? Yeah.
just hammering in the irresponsibility of the moment, from kind of the media at large, which again doesn't feel reminiscent of what we're going through right now at all.
The whole or Kay confirms that the whole is the only one actually broadcasting this at this point, and we just see them just like opening fire on students. Shannon says, "Christ, like a university would be full of armed kids in a flash demonstration with no preparation." And this again just feels extremely prescient, but also like we said, like history rhymes. And then Spider notes that there was no order to shoot, and they start drawing conclusions based on that. That I either they all panicked, or they were told that it was okay to engage in violence.
Yeah.
And I think the way that's phrased is kind of that, like, it's unrealistic that this bunch of professional soldiers all freaked out. Therefore, it's likely that they were already given the order.
Yeah. 100%.
And, like, that is almost certainly true within the text, and it fits the tone of the story and the whole conspiratorial nature of what's going on. But like, it is also, I think that the framing of it, especially where it's like, kid reaching into coat pocket for the label maker. I mean, how many shootings from police and other law enforcement have we seen over the last however many years over jumpy professionals, So I know that that's intended to be a rhetorical question, but I would merely point out that in real life, the opposite is very much like scary likely.
Yeah.
Yeah, but as you note in the text, it's certainly the scenario of malice as opposed to incompetence. Um,
Yeah, 100%.
and Spider notes as we said, it is weird that these like professional soldiers freak out, assuming that these are all professional soldiers and
Yeah.
all that yada yada yada. But we cut back to the White House
So, well,
and
real quick before you move on, because I wanted to throw out that one of the reasons that these guys are faceless, right, is because we don't want to identify them as people. They're extensions of the Smiler. So my natural thought is, hey, here's two options. Which one do we think he's capable of more? You know what I mean? Hiring incompetent people to kill people, or intentionally killing people because he wants to. That's kind of the way I saw it. I was like, they're all faceless. You know what I mean? Like his face is their face.
yeah, I mean, I think with that question posed, I would say that I would assume that the Smiler is more acting out of malice as opposed to incompetence.
100% exactly. Yeah. So
Yeah.
he explicitly stated he does things out of malice.
So we cut back to the White House and Robert McX, who has really just elevated himself over the course of this. He's now the hard-hitting journalist, like actually like putting the screws to the White House press secretary.
Hell yeah.
Uh, like storms in, points out the shooting situation, and while the networks are down, she responds with "that fuck," which is just great because you just know that like like it's all just like falling apart here.
And again, we talked about in the last one with Robert McX. It's nice to see. I kind of picked up on like the whole if Spider's not going to be around much longer, someone else is going to need to step up. We need people to step up in general. And we get a great payoff for that later, so I'm not going to jump ahead. But again, we're continuing this Robert McKeck's like redemption tour, if you will.
Yeah.
So yeah, really cool.
So we cut to some of the other feeds that are going on. We see a sex puppet scene. We see that Robert McX is not being aired because of the lockdown on the press that is going
Mhm.
on. And we cut to Oscar Rossini saying that he's ready for them to like come find him. That
He's gotta be wired on those little espressos,
I
man.
know he's having so many of them.
Every time we look, he's got another one of those things up to his lips.
He's very interesting in this scene, and like, as we go on, because this is a random reference to throw out there, but he reminds me of Danny Rand, the Iron Fist, because I'll quickly say one of my favorite relationships in comics is Luke Cage, Danny Rand. I think it's the most important
God
friendship in
bless
Marvel
you.
comics.
God bless you for actually reading some of those comics and not forming all of your opinions off of a half-ass Netflix show.
Oh, I liked the show,
I
but
love.
we'll get into that.
I love
So,
Heroes for Hire though. Like,
yeah, no, it's
so.
great. So not to deviate too much because I will talk an hour, but one of the best relationships is them, and there's an issue. Don't ask me to tell you which one off the top of my head. Where basically Danny is like he makes a symbolic stand, and he's like, no, this is injustice, and Luke is like, cool, you're a rich white guy. I'm glad you can take a stand, and I always remember
Oh,
that
yeah.
moment and being like, holy shit, like that's a really important moment. And this dude, Yelena's dad, is like, no, let them come. And it's like, that's cool. You have money to get yourself out of this, bro. Like that was my first thought. Yeah.
There will be a little bit of payoff for that
Yeah,
specifically, but
100%. Yeah.
but yeah, and I like that Kay is like, I'm so not ready for this. News was only ever going to be a sideline. We were going to use the hole for porno.
Which explains the name.
Yeah, which is funny to think about because we've seen moments of like material on like Pornhub being like I'm trying to remember the whole like specifics on this one, but like there have been positive uses for internet porn technology. Um,
Oh, there have definitely been, like, I can't remember specifically. There have definitely been moments where, like, video that is being like censored on social media is allowed to air on like Pornhub. I don't think anything's anywhere close to like this degree of consequence, but yeah.
right. And certainly, if we want to get into like the technological advancements of it all, like the modern streaming only exists because of porn. Uh,
Oh, I would say every great media leap forward was chosen by the pornography industry,
oh, for
frankly.
sure. Like we could go into a long diatribe
You
about
knew
just
that Blu-ray was going to beat HD DVD because the porn industry picked Blu-ray.
right,
Like,
exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, it's 100% true. It's also
it's
a
also
fan
insane to say out loud, but
yes. And they Jay Baruchel does a full explanation of that in Tropic Thunder. Like they just like cut to him explaining like how porn dictated Blu-ray over HD DVD. It's a wonderful scene that they include in that. Anyway, tangents aside, cutting back to choppers everywhere. More thugs. They're just, everywhere. They're thugs. Um, and Spider gets a call, and it's from Mary, and her story gets interrupted by we see a shot of the campus, and news about the blackout going on. But we cut to Mary trying to explain some stuff that's going on here, and this is probably the most infamous example of a continuity fuck up in the entire series. Ellis has been asked about this and has confirmed that he just fucked up on this one, which is that Mary was given the camera after Shaq was had killed himself. Um,
Oh,
no shit, yeah,
interesting. I
that's
didn't
true.
catch that.
I didn't yeah, think about that in the moment, but you're right.
yeah, certainly after Vita dies. Um, and so and it's not one of the way the story is told because like um it's told where he confides with her that he is hunting for Vita's killer,
Right.
and then gives her the camera. So it's not even a scenario of like, well, was this a flashback or something? And like Ellis was just like, yeah, I just fucked up. I'm writing 60 issues straight through. Like the continuity of it is just not something that you pay as much attention to. And I'm like, this makes sense. It it makes me think of like the long campaigns that I've run as a dungeon master, where it's just like, yeah, sometimes you just need to sort of like stick the landing as best you can, and like some details have to get fudged to make it fit as properly as you can make it.
Like, you can tell he was keeping Mary around and bringing her back up once or twice, like, for a reason. I think anybody who is, semi media savvy saw that Chekhov's gun being placed.
Right.
It was just always a question of how was it going to pay off? How was Mary going to end up being like a surprising linchpin in, the finale? And it is kind of good to see her coming in, and it's like, okay, here we go. This is, I've been waiting to see what they want to do with her. But you're right, like I totally didn't think about the fact that the timeline is off on that. But
Yeah, it's not a big deal. It's
fine.
Just yeah, it just is one of those infamous continuity fuck ups. But the point is that Mary has shots of Shax hiring Vita Severn's killer. And so she figures that through a payphone she can email things because the march of technology just was not it's just so close but so far away from like what technology would be at not even like the 5 years away from the iPhone, but like if this is 2002 at this point that we're talking about, like the modern smartphone has already been conceived of, and like by 2004 we're talking about full on internet communication devices that are uh like perfectly capable smartphones in terms of like what we would consider one today.
Yeah.
Um,
This is the past's idea of the future.
right,
In a
exactly.
very charming but wrong way.
Yeah. I've referred to this as a 20th century work of speculative fiction as opposed to a 21st century work.
We're 20th century people, so
And earlier, obviously, Mary was the person I was talking about when we were talking about Liesel, by the way. So
Yes.
yeah,
yes.
Yeah, so it's good that she doesn't. So we get a very like Johnny Mnemonic sequence in terms of like how they transfer the data because Mary is calling Spider on the phone trait that is in his brain, and so it's like, well, we'll have to like share some of the like we'll have to store the data in your brain. And it's like, but my brain is like starting to fail on me, and blah blah blah. Uh, we'll have to give up like one of your bowel movements, or a memory of
I
one of
was
your
like, that
bowel
was a
movements.
really good shit.
I had to kill it with a shovel, you know?
I love that you mentioned Johnny Mnemonic because I swear to God, 2 days ago I saw it on Netflix. I want to say, and I'm like, I should rewatch that. And I was telling Amanda about the Henry Rollins monologue, the information overload. Like I know that by heart. It's great. So
Yelena cross-references all the pictures and confirms, like, okay, this one's a picture of the actual killer. Meanwhile, guards sort of come up to Mary and eventually let her go uh, because she's a revival, and they're like, she's not worth anything. But on while she's being allowed to leave, she goes, "Fuck you, GI," uh, which is heartwarming, but at the same time, she's being allowed to leave. So,
Yeah. Easier to say that in that moment, but
right. So Spider is thrilled about this. They share the details. This is when Yelena's dad says, like, "No, you guys get out of here. There's still going to be more to this, but I'm going to let them try to arrest me because it's going to be funny."
yeah, and he, a little bit of a shit as they arrest him.
Yeah.
Um, but he kind of just listens like, look, I'm rich, I'm white, I'm famous, but I'm coming along peacefully. What are you gonna do about it?
Yeah, like we see a little bit of the chaos that's going on at the White House, as they say that like, oh, definitely the Smiler has like we've pushed it far enough. Like the Smiler is on his way out. The only question is like, what is he going to do with the last like gasp of power that he has?
yeah, and just burn it down. Basically. Like yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, so we get Oscar being like kind of smooth. He pours a glass of wine for Kay as the rest head out.
I ship it.
Yeah. We get a nice little like kiss on the forehead of Oscar to Yelena as she's heading out. And it reminds me of the like kiss on the forehead from the previous volume when Spider
Hmm.
is like happy that she wrote the article for him.
Right. Yeah. More of that complex.
Yep, we conclude the issue with more of these fucking thugs showing up at the Rosini compound, and he comes out and he gives this like fairly badass speech about just how impressive he is as a person. He says, "I am Oscar Rosini, noted city philanthropist, a supporter of the party in government, active on a dozen political committees, and a substantial donor of financial gifts. I have no criminal record, several awards, three of which were given to me by presidents, and a medal. I am also finally a television star. I would like to see. I'd like it if you could arrest me now, because it will ensure that in a week's time you will be in a most unpleasant prison with the mutant erection of a career dog rapist deep in your colon."
Yeah.
Again, like as we bring up that it's definitely meant to be like a parallel with Spider and like that kind of a weird complex with Yelena. Like, yeah, he's now like doing the grin and saying a spiderism,
Yes.
So, God damn it, he's spreading.
Right. And so then we pick up with the next story, which is Straight to Hell, where it opens with explosions. And someone is throwing a Molotov cocktail at a Callahan poster on a wall. We cut to Robert McX outside of the White House recording, and I'm not entirely clear where his feed is going, if they're like locking down
Well, it's going
everything.
everywhere but the
Yeah, I was
city.
gonna say the way I read it is it's going out to like affiliate stations everywhere outside the city, but then the city is blocking it.
Gotcha.
This is where like again working in broadcast news for so long. Sadly, this is like makes complete sense to me, but may not have as much to a bunch of other people. So
Yeah, that makes sense. And I love that McX was like forced to like present a script. And then he's like, and this is a first for me, which is I'm significantly deviating from my script.
So
everybody
good. Like
freaking out in the control room, and
it's so good. We'll do it live. Fuck it.
Yeah, it's so wild because like you end up like really liking Robert McX.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Even though he looks like the guy you will not like.
Yeah, for
yeah,
real.
Right, yeah.
he looks like the uncle I don't want talking at Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Right. So anyway, so McX sort of explains more about like what's going on with the state of the world, and calls on the president to stop, answer your country, explain what we're seeing, and notes that the only people who are actually asking the questions are Spider Jerusalem, Shannon Yarrow, and Yelena Rosini.
This is the first of a long string of unbroken, what I'm going to call Aaron Sorkin moments.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like
100.
there's
We
a lot of
referenced
that
the
going
newsroom
on.
so many times on this show.
Yeah. Look, I will sometimes clown on Aaron Sorkin, but I'm not gonna pretend I don't super love the newsroom. And we have a
Ooh,
lot
no.
of the newsroom moments coming up.
It's fine. It's just my favorite show.
So anyway, McX like calls out the president for the fact that like students were being shot for carrying stickers. So apt for the times. And we
Right.
get shots of the news where we are seeing that the House Judiciary Committee is convening an emergency session because of the evidence of Vita's death, and the FBI is opening up an investigation into the death of Mrs. Callahan, um, and many lawsuits are being filed, and yeah, everything is starting to fall apart for the president. But he still has martial law going on the city, and so all the news feeds there are still being prevented from showing anything.
Yeah, exactly. Which is kind of cool because we've been so city centric, right? And we talked about the city as basically a living being. And where the city goes, the country goes. Well, now the country's getting the information the city's not. And I was kind of like, oh, that'd be really cool if like this is how we open up to the country as a whole. It doesn't really go that way, but that was kind of what I was hoping it would do. You know, is like let's open
Right.
it up at the last minute. But yeah, we don't quite get that.
Yeah, but we do have like a nice rallying moment where all these different news organizations all like give up on their own safety,
Hmm.
and say fuck it, and that they're just gonna like air whatever. And it's a domino situation. Like once the first like group starts doing it, everyone else like kind of falls in. Uh,
Yeah, like the
You jump to everyone else
emptied.
being like, nah, fuck it. They're doing it. We're doing it too. Let's go. We're all going
right.
to be brave together.
Yeah, they broke. We're breaking. Like
Yeah.
they're not getting the ratings, which is very
The
funny to me.
newsroom happens.
Like yeah, the newsroom, the whole newsroom thing happens. It's the whole episode of what was it? It was Osama bin Laden in the newsroom when he was killed, and they're like they don't want to be the first one to go, but once someone goes,
Yeah.
fuck it, go. Like
Yeah.
yeah,
And so we cut to Royce like also chiming in that like they're gonna go live with what they have, and he says let them fucking fire me, which is great because like we like Royce, he's been a
Oh,
great
yeah.
contributor to this whole series, and the fact that he's not Spider's editor at this point is like kind of sad just because we're missing out on him as a character. So it's nice that
yeah.
he also stands up for journalistic ethics.
Yeah. He still made, you know what, a really heavy impact on this last chunk of the series.
Oh yeah,
So
Two-Fisted
I'm
Editor is one of
glad.
my favorite stories. Like,
Yeah.
It's
I'm
fucking
glad
great,
that they've kind of rolled him back into relevance towards the end.
so we see more civil disobedience. We see another Molotov cocktail, this time being thrown at one of these like big thug Humvees. Yeah, we see a news feed like show off like the various martial law troopers that are inside their particular newsroom, and we see like rioting people. I want to call out specifically Derek Robertson having a dude holding like a Wolverine claw thing here. Because he's got like his Marvel Max run on Wolverine later on,
Yeah.
and there's another Wolverine reference in here. So like I just noted it's like oh he's showing people with like Wolverine claws a bunch in here.
Wolverine Claw, he's got a white wife beater. He's got kind of the like cornered hair a little bit. It's definitely,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
more than just a nod.
Yeah, definitely. That cola can says piss on it. It's the very first thing I saw was piss. I was like, ah,
Yeah.
I mean, the way this series is, that could just be piss.
yeah. Oh, I 100% expect it. The gangster moment for me with the media thing before we move on is the lady telling the cameraman to turn the camera around. That's the most newsroom
Yeah.
thing
Yeah.
that's ever happened. Like, yeah,
And now footage of them killing unarmed students.
it's their smile, so good.
Yeah.
Again, it's the shit. Like, there's a piece of you that just loves to like daydream that this would happen and work,
Right.
right? Like, you'd love to think that the collective national media would have this sort of moment of solidarity and call things exactly the way that they are and air the obvious things that we're saying and just say it, and that would matter. And I'm not going to say that can't happen or that it wouldn't work or matter, but like getting to read this out in a comic where it does happen and it does get to matter is it's why I keep bringing up Aaron Sorkin. Is like the reason we love the West Wing is we love West Wing moments. We love when that shit happens and works, and it probably wouldn't in real life.
Yeah, this is a power fantasy.
Yeah.
It is cathartic as hell in a way that just, you know, we're we're saying this is all prescient, but like this is a much happier ending than what I think we're going to get in the real world.
Yeah. Yeah.
So more jackbooted thugs, and they finally come along upon the army of transients that Fred Christ has sort of assembled. He gives a big speech, and then the like the one thug in the front goes, "I don't see any cameras," and it's just very clear that like they can just get away with everything. Like like the big speech did matter, and in this moment, Fred is just like, "We'll rush them because we don't have any other choice." And they all fucking die.
I will
I also
say, first of all, Fred going out like a gangster, maybe nice. I mean, he could have just been a weasel, but it was also pointless, which I really liked because that's kind of like Fred's whole thing is like, I'll make a stand, and they're like, there's no cameras, no one's gonna know about this, and like that's the last thing Fred hears is really great. Also, I very carefully studied the picture of the transients. These are his thugs. This is not the transient community. It's not the women and children and stuff. So I feel less bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah. See, I took it very much the way I kind of read this was that, like, this is very much for show on Fred's part, that he expects that this is being broadcast and he can have his hero moment and try
Right.
to, like, salvage his reputation. And no, and like, kind of getting called out on it. Like, there's no cameras, dude. This is pointless. And him going, like, fuck. Like, yes, there's no cameras, there's no protection, we are about to get killed, but also like, damn, I was really only mugging for the cameras.
Right.
So it's like he kind of goes out, depending on how you read it, like it's kind of gangster, but he also kind of goes out like a chump.
Yeah, 100%.
It really
He
depends on
thinks
how
he's
you
being
read the
gangster
moment. Yes,
up to the
yes,
moment he
yes,
gets
yes.
shot because it's
I
like,
do love the face he's making when he's like, shit. It's very
Yeah.
pathetic.
yeah,
It's very Fred Christ.
Well, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and so with that, arguably the antagonist that has been the longest running one in the series is now dead.
Yeah, yeah, the longest running one, yeah, definitely.
So we cut back to the White House where we get confirmation that he is heading out for some reason, and people are like the press is trying to get statements out of him, and we get some really weird lines in here. Mr. President, kill your wife, fuck cripples, police state, guilty of every crime, and then Robert McAxe. Tell us of your hate for the American people, Mr. President, and tell us of your hate for Spider Jerusalem. And at which point he just grabs his press secretary and like throws her into the
So funny.
yeah.
I love Robert
Once-
McX just
yeah.
like fucking saying it how he's gonna say it. It's so good. Just like he's not like, hey, tell us about this. Every time he asks the president a question, it's pointed and mean, and I love it.
Hey, shit ass.
Like it's so J.
Tell us
Jonah
how much
Jameson.
you suck.
Like literally, he's so J. Jonah Jameson coded. I love it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
much.
except we know he has a Scottish accent.
Oh yeah, Mick X.
Yeah. The president takes off. We get the cult of Vita Severn being like, if the Smiler is responsible for her death, like there will be blood. But it looks like things are falling apart for him. And we get Spider, Yelena, and Shannon on top of a roof, noting that the city is on fire and that things are going bad. And they speculate what the president would do right now, considering how bad things are. And it's like, yeah, he's gonna come and fucking try to kill you. And it's like, yep, that is exactly what's about to happen.
And I'm ready for it.
Yep.
Bring it.
And over the shoulder of Shannon Yarrow is a fucking Wolverine claw hand.
Oh yeah. Hey, there it is.
Yet again.
Yeah, it's just a detail. I just noticed it. It's just it's the thing that's happening.
It's another one of these badass like superhero shots. We've had a lot of these lately. Like,
Yeah, this is by the way the panel that I'm using for the episode
oh,
art for,
100%. Yeah, I didn't even have to ask.
I mean,
honestly.
it's absolute aura farming, like right here for sure.
Yeah.
So we open the next story. The long day closes, and the cover. Keith, did you see who the? Oh, it's Derek who's the
It's back to
cover.
Derek
Yeah,
for the rest of
yeah.
the run. It's Derek.
So we get a laptop saying shutting down with a bottle of Ellis hard whiskey next to it, and the bowel disruptor adjacent. And we open the issue with a helicopter flying in, and I'm guessing this is Air Force Two. Flies in. We get more news about how things are just like falling apart for him, and we see his like press secretary woman being like, "Fuck you back, Mr. President."
Because he fucking sacrificed her.
Right.
It's so good.
Um,
I love the tease right here of him saying how far are we from Dante Street. And it appears to be like just showing that he's not knowing where he is. It appeared to be like to emphasize how much he's losing, but it's actually a hook for later, and I really liked that when it paid off.
Yeah, so it's nice that we get the reminder of Spider being kind of fuzzy, just because that is hanging over our head for this whole thing. Like I like this where it's like, in fact, I feel when you talk to people and they lie to you and you write about it, interview? Yeah, I feel an interview coming on.
I hate this is the way that they show Spider like mentally declining towards the end of the series is that he just talks the way that I do,
Right.
where I forget like a very basic word in the only language I've ever spoken, and have to explain it in a long roundabout way, and then somebody's like, basic word? Yes, thank you.
Yeah. You know, that shovel thing you use to dig food with. Spoon?
That's the bitch.
Yeah. So we get a little bit of back and forth between Spider and Yelena, and Spider notes that you sound like me, just to keep that whole like she's turned it into Spider thing going on. Spider stumbles a little bit, and then they start walking through the streets, and like there's like rioting and stuff going on, and everyone who sees Spider like decides to start following him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very, very Forrest Gump. I don't know why that was my first thought, but like very Pied Piper, I guess I could say too. But yeah,
That's kind of closer to where
Yeah.
I was going with it.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
yeah,
but-
I do like him marching up the street and with the crowd following behind him.
yeah. It emphasizes what we've talked about this entire time is his relationship with the city.
Yeah,
You know?
because we've seen these kinds of moments before with him, where like he goes for a walk in the city and like everyone just follows him, and this is him doing it as his like final. This is his final form for his confrontation with the Smiler, where it's just like, yeah, I can amass an army of people just by like walking through the streets.
And he leans into it, you know?
Yeah,
Like once you get that full double page spread, he's like leaning into it, smiling.
because
Like,
he's literally leaning. He's
Yeah,
yeah. And I like the very edge of it, the guy taking a picture of it all. I'm like, hell yeah.
and when he leans into it, you know whose hand he's holding?
Oh, I didn't even notice. I don't know, man.
I
It's
know,
weird.
I know. So they arrive at the Dante Street police station. He gets frisked by Secret Service. I like this spot. Enjoying your job? I can't answer that, sir. Meanwhile, Yelena and Shannon start like corralling all of the journalists there. It's like, all right, so who's live right now for what we will see in a moment? Spider goes in and he is escorted into an office with the Smiler. There's like one Secret Service guy who's just like got a big old fucking smirk on his face when Spider walks by him, and I interpreted that as like the guy who's been doing all the hits.
could be.
Oh. Yeah. I mean that That could be the case.
Like he doesn't get any comeuppance in this, so like it doesn't really matter if it is or not. But it was just like, oh, I think that like it's weird that they specifically show a sociopathic like Secret Service guy.
Well, and
Uh,
like, and then Spider looking back at him as he passes too. Like, I do think there's something a little bit like calling out that. And I mean, I guess it could just be the paranoia of like Spider wondering, who's. I mean, he just asked how many people are on the payroll,
right.
So I mean, it could also be that, but like, I feel like that point's also already pretty well made and established before we hit these panels. So it's just an interesting thing. It does stand out.
Just a detail I caught, and then Spider goes in to talk with the Smiler, and they say there's two guards in there, and that's for your protection as well as his, which is true. And yeah, so Callahan slaps him around a little bit, and Spider makes fun of him for that. It's so this is it, slap me around a bit and then shoot me. God, you're boring. But Callahan says, like, no, I'm not going to shoot you. The Secret Service agents are going to shoot you. Wah ha ha ha. And then they're like, no, we're not. No, we're not. The ones you paid off is are still in the chopper. If you're going to kill him, you have to do it yourself.
It's so funny because like he becomes so impotent as a antagonist in this scene. It just becomes clear how much he's lost. And he thinks he's still in power. He's like deluding himself and he probably thinks he can get away with it. And he can just kill somebody else that he cares about and get away with it. Like I think in his mind he's still like, I can pull this off, but he has no idea the game is over.
It kind of goes to show like how much people like the Smiler, how much like fascist,
Hmm.
authoritarian manipulators ultimately just rely on everyone around them going along with them. And
Yeah.
as soon as people are like, man, what about nah?
Yeah.
Then most of them don't have the skills or the guts to do it themselves.
I mean, I will say, like, we've talked about Spider having, like, this degree of plot armor for this whole situation. And, like, this is a really big spot for it. Like, he very easily could have just been killed at this point. And only some of the information would have gotten out that he was looking for. Um, I'm sure there would be like some additional conversation points about it, but like I don't know if Spider intended to be a martyr when he went in there. Um, but it's certainly he got lucky that the Secret Service guys that were in the room with them were not the ones that had been paid off.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
This would have gone very differently if they had been.
yeah, I don't see how you plan for that.
I like that they left. They didn't just say no, shoot him and stand there. They just bailed. I thought that was kind of cool.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, it's still cowardly,
Yeah.
but it's them saying we want no part of this rather than like it's the second best option, I guess. The best would be standing up and doing the right thing, but if they're not going to do that, at the very least they can just leave.
So Spider needles the Smiler a little bit more, and the Smiler like admits just a little bit more information specifically about Vita, and then Spider points out that like, well, you've been so worried about me being covered with guns that you didn't even stop to think that I might be covered with something else, and that's source gas, motherfucker. It's broadcasting to all the reporters right outside.
And again, we get this Deus Ex Machina that comes up quite a bit, and he, and it's something that the Smiler has accounted for in the past, and just
Yeah,
didn't this time. And I thought that was kind of weird because I was like, oh, it's gonna be source gas. I'm like, no, he saw that coming last time, and he forgot, I guess.
See, what's funny is I forgot about source gas. For until he brought it back up and I was like, "Oh shit, they've done this like multiple times." Yeah. And likewise, I was so focused on like what is going to be the play to try to kill him that I did not even think like, damn, yeah, it's just to ask leading questions and get him to admit to shit on recording. It's really that simple. So it's fun rereading it, knowing that was coming, and reading Spider's kind of like very leading questions prior to the reveal. It's very fun, I think, to hit the reveal that it's the source gas and then scroll back, go back up in your comic app and like read through that again. You know, because you can see where he's fishing.
yeah. It's one of those spots where like there's a little bit of reliance on the incompetence of the Smiler, and like you can argue that Spider has like done everything he could to like have the Smiler be off like off his game, like, oh, you're so focused on me using a gun, you didn't stop to think about something else. But it seemed that the Smiler could just very casually negate like all of his tech before. So it's like surprising that he didn't stop to think about it this time.
Yeah, yeah. It's just maybe because you know, he's shook. Basically, like he's frantic. You know what I mean? Maybe that's it. I don't know.
Yeah. Again, headcanon works just fine for it.
Yeah,
But it's just a detail of like Spider is just relying on the incompetence of strangers.
It's a lot of Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, again, we got lucky that he didn't have any of the service agents on the payroll in the room. We got lucky that the Smiler is kind of too gutless to pull the trigger for the most part. Um, Even when we do the source gas reveal, and the Smiler starts getting ready to pull the like, oh, so they're listening. Oh my God, he's got a gun. He's got my gun. Blah blah. Blah, and it's like you could have pulled the trigger already, but
right.
he's not going to, and so that's its own little piece of Deus Ex Machina. And then it's like the police chief or lieutenant or whatever her role is coming in at the last minute to be like, caught you, motherfucker, bam. None of during which time the Smiler pulls the trigger, which he could have done.
Right.
Um, Incompetent villain syndrome on max display here.
Yeah. Spider just gets very lucky in this whole situation. But yeah, it's Detective Newton shows up, and she knocks out the Smiler and arrests him. And with that, Spider has used up all of his reserves of strength, and he falls to the ground, saying, "One last stunt took it all out of me. I'm so fucking tired." And
yeah,
that ends the issue.
yeah. Um. Oh man, crazy.
Kind of leaving up in the air like what Spider's fate is going to be. So going in like episode issue 60 is just going to be the like, and here's the aftermath.
The
Yep.
denouement.
We've
Yeah,
wrapped everything up. What is Spider's fate?
And we open with that being a little bit of a question. So we get a brick joke in the form of the toll keeper from the first issue being somewhat beaten up. He claims that he shit's crooked now because he was
How
worked over.
does that even work, dude? Don't answer that.
I mean the amount of violence directed at him for, if I remember correctly, just being like kind of like an asshole. What, like when Spider was like first coming into the city. Like it's disproportionate levels of violence, but anyway, he reveals that that the filthy assistants beat his ass while Spider just watched. I'm amazed that that's the first time that happened on the show, actually.
That's the worst story you could ever have to tell somebody. It's like, yeah, man, I got my ass beat, and Spider-Man was just watching and touching himself.
Right.
That was the auto Spider-Man. It's okay. It's
Yes, this is the superior one.
yeah.
So Royce is driving up through this whole beautiful vista. He's driving up the goddamn mountain to see Spider, and he arrives. We see the fence with like skulls out front, just to have the medieval kind of displays that we see with Spider. When he gets there, Yelena runs up and says, "Uncle Mitch" again, which is fun that we have kept that running joke that she has with him.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
because
like it.
it didn't strike me that there was actually like a familial, like, I mean, obviously they say that they lied about him being her uncle, but it doesn't seem like it never struck me that there was actually any kind of like fondness beyond
Right.
like, yeah, you hired me.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like he's a close family friend or something. It was uh, just a facade, and one that like it's fun that she is called, like, I don't think she ever like really called him Uncle Mitch before the reveal. It's really only been after that we've gotten like two instances where it's been like Uncle Mitch.
Yeah, I really like that the toll booth operator was the same guy. By the way, I thought that was great.
Yeah,
Um, And the look of her new look obviously is closer and closer is what I'll say.
Yes. Well, so I mean, right off the bat, we get this big ass fucking spider tattoo on her shoulder that is like the female symbol, but with spider legs.
Yeah. She's got the buzz cut, the cigarette up behind the ear. The glasses are different. They're like the very narrow rectangle. It's blue glass, and they're obviously symmetrical, but it's much closer to a spider-esque set of glasses. She's dressing a lot more. I mean, like I said, it's she's always kind of been in like the all black, but it's very simultaneously revealing a lot of skin, but it's not necessarily very like sexualized.
Right. Well, it's the way Spider is.
Yeah.
Like Spider defaults to like
It's
wearing
almost
as little as
frumpy.
possible. Yeah.
You know, it's sleek but frumpy somehow at the same time in a
Yeah.
punky kind of way.
Punky is a very good way to describe it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Yelena leads in Royce, and she gives this whole like spiel about how bad Spider's doing, but indicates that he is able to grow pretty well.
I love the house. It's a gorgeous house.
Yeah,
Oh, I'd kill for this house.
oh yeah. I mean, please, we're millennials. We'd kill 4 houses.
Yeah.
It's true.
But anyway, yeah. So Shannon arrives at this point, and they talk about how Spider is able to do gardening work, but he doesn't have the hand-eye coordination. And we kind of get a basic explanation of what they're working on. So Yelena's about to head out to work on a special column for 8 weeks. Meanwhile, Shannon had just been away, and she's like working on a book.
Very cool. I like the bit that like Royce is basically like, you could owe me a column, and it's just like, like she's like, no, that's not my thing. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
they have their defined roles, which is interesting because it's almost like they're both taking over his 2 roles, one each. So yeah.
Yeah, they go on to say that Yelena has just turned into Spider at this point, so just they're just coming out and saying it.
Yeah. It's no longer subtext.
Yeah, pure text. We get the cat killing apparently a fox and pissing on it, which is just fun to just catch up with the cat for a moment there. And then Royce is escorted out to see Spider, and Spider is just sitting out there, still rocking the shades, and is apparently doing okay, but like I don't know, like
I will point out the change to like the greens, yellows, earth tones, and the like baseball cap is looking extremely late in life Hunter S. Thompson. Like to the point where he was like nearly impossible to understand what he was saying because his brain was just so fried on drugs and shit.
Yeah.
Like you look up interviews from like late in Hunter S. Thompson's life, and this is like startling how much it gives off, the spread, the kind of looseness of it. You know, just the parallels continuing.
Oh yeah, for sure. In particular, I'll shout out, look up interviews that Conan O'Brien did with Hunter S. Thompson. Like he is incomprehensible.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I want to point out a reminder: Hunter S. Thompson's from Louisville, Kentucky. He should have the same accent I do. Like, there's no explanation for that man's voice.
Yeah. I like that obviously he's more low key. I like that he asked Shannon if he can have a cigarette. He has to ask permission. I thought that was kind of sweet. Like, yeah.
Well, because like he's gonna need help getting it out and getting it lit, right? If his hands don't work. So
But the old
it's
Spider
kinda
would be
that
like,
too.
I want a cigarette. You know what I mean?
That's true, though. That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a humility to it.
There's an affection here that I think they were in a war zone basically for 10 volumes. Like, you know what I mean?
Yep.
he's
And now
softening up.
they're home. They're spending time, and they're all kind of like her, just like, sure, like I think that's really cute.
Yeah, it is depending on your interpretation, which we'll talk about in a second. Because I figure we'll hit the beats and then
Yeah.
and then see if that reframes anything. So we get some information about the Smiler, that he has an army of lawyers that he's paying a shitload of money to keep him out of jail. And that is fine. He's going to eventually run out of money.
I like the line about, some fuckers are actually donating money to him, and like
That
thinking
hit
about
too
all of the
close.
shitheads who just like call a customer a racial slur at their job and then get a couple $100,000 on a GoFundMe purely from people who are like, I like that you were racist.
The Kyle
know.
Rittenhouse one is the one that came to me.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, that's just the tool of the right at this point, is just like, I was a huge piece of shit. Please give me money for doing the thing you wish you could do.
Hey,
And
they're
everyone is like, yes.
They're bankrupting their own people. They
Yeah.
can do it all they want.
So Spider says that he's not getting better, that it's going very slow, but it's progressive, and that he is retired. But Royce doesn't believe him. He says he'll be back. But Spider is adamant that he's done, and they part on good terms. And Shannon sees Royce off, and this is when we get the reveal that the 1% of people that could recover from damage from eye pollen, Spider is in that group.
Yeah, he pulls the cigarette out. He takes the what looks like the gun and looks like he's gonna shoot himself, and then it's just a lighter, and he lights his own cigarette, and yeah, he just cracks up laughing, spins the gun around on his finger, revolver ocelot style. Plot armor, baby.
Yeah,
Can't keep Spider Jerusalem down.
I don't know how I feel about this.
so I've been wondering this whole goddamn time because Derek, Keith has had this running whole statement of like, in a cyberpunk story, there's no happy ending, and I've been like, well, this is pretty close to a happy ending,
There's a happiest possible ending, but
right?
not a happy ending.
Yeah.
And that feels really like Bugs Bunny winking at the camera at the end, and then
But that's the thing. He is Bugs Bunny.
I know, but I wanted to.
Like, I think there was a part of me the first time I was reading this that was expecting that this would end with his like death and martyrdom, right?
Yeah.
And I think it very much feels like that's the thing that's building up to it. But the thing you have to understand is Spider Jerusalem built different.
Yeah.
Like, and that's been the running through line of the comic, is he gets away with shit nobody else gets away with. He gets the dramatic protection of comic timing. So he does that, and I realize that he's good. He's in the clear. He's in the 1%. And it's the last prank that he can play on us, the reader, right? Like, he denies us the sappy, expected, sacrificial lamb ending.
I think I would have liked it more if he literally just didn't tell us. Like they leave, he pulls out the gun.
Subtle.
If he lights the cigarette, and you have to realize yourself, wait, he said he couldn't light his own cigarettes, and maybe that 1% panel is him just kind of smiling to himself. If that's how it ended. But him being like 1%, spinning the gun around, ha 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 ha.
Yeah,
it was a really weird tone to end this story on, those last three.
I see what you mean.
Yeah. So one thing that it makes me ask is, how much do the assistants know? Like,
Exactly.
were they just laying it on thick for Royce, or are they actually in the dark?
Is he lying to them?
How can he be
choose to
lying
think-
to them all the time if one of them's with him like at all times?
Yeah.
Like 100% Yelena knows for sure. The only question I have is if Shannon knows, and I think she does. I think that they were laying it on thick for Royce, like where it's like, can I have a cigarette? And she's like, yes, little spider, you can have a cigarette.
Which is weird because Royce is his boy. Like, like, I don't know.
Yeah, but there might be the expectation that they'll try to make him come back, and he wants to stay on the mountain and grow his vegetables. Be a weirdo.
So, how do I put this? Is this an attempt to leave the option open to come back to it later?
Oh, for sure. Like,
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Because I know it was like a planned ending, and everything like that. But I
think it's possible, but I mean, it communicates firmly like this is it.
Yeah,
it's going out on a Looney Tunes, ba-da-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba, but it is, this is it, roll the credits, we're good. I guess it's true that in today's pop culture, of legacy sequels and spin-offs, there is nothing that protects us from a Transmetropolitan revival, or something that's like just focused on like Yelena or something like that. I kind of feel like if it was going to happen, it would have happened by now, right?
Yeah, I also don't think that there's the taste for it, the
Yeah.
appetite. Like while I think that this is a really worthwhile series to like go back and look at, part of it is from the interesting standpoint of like what they were saying in 2002 about
Yeah.
about the future, and how we've gotten to this point. You, I think it I I mean, sure. So this kind of gets into the conversation then about the landing. Like, did they stick the landing? Is this a complete work?
I think it's complete. I literally have a problem with 3 panels, so I'm not going to bury a work for 3 slightly off like tone panels. You know what I mean? But yeah, I think it was pretty good, and maybe that is necessary, those panels, because of the tone of it. You know what I mean? Like maybe it needs to have that, but I don't know. I would have liked a serious ending. I don't know.
The series has a very schizophrenic tone,
Yeah, it's
right?
true.
Like, and it throws that manic sense of humor in. I mean, again, like it's kind of like part of why I brought up like the craziness of him waking up from a coma, shooting the other guys, them crashing into the Church of Satan, hitting the nun, Satan's head falling on the car, and then the cigarette coming through the roof and mashing the dude's head. Like, that's unnecessary. You could have stopped a whole page worth of panels before that point. But for better or worse, Warren Ellis wanted to have that sort of manic, we crossed the line twice kind of attitude. And not just when it came to being like offensive and edgy, like, but also in terms of like what they could get away with Spider. So I think I was primed for it. But I can see it being divisive for people. I really gotta be honest, I don't know what like general reaction to the end of this comic is.
I mean, I think it's, from what I understand, it's usually accepted pretty well. I
Yeah.
never heard any particular backlash. So
I could see it being divisive. I liked it though.
yeah,
But yeah, again, like I mean, like it's absolutely a complete work. I would really,
yeah.
I would hate to see them do more of it at this point. I actively don't want that. There is a little piece in my head that's a little afraid. You know how like a bunch of different Garth Ennis comics have been getting adapted into TV series with like the edges sanded off?
Yeah.
And to be fair, they're Garth Ennis comics, so usually for the better for that. But like there is the one fear that somebody is going to do that with Transmetropolitan, and I just don't think that Transmetropolitan having its edges sanded off works quite the same way as like The Boys, or Preacher, in terms of making it a more palatable. Like, it's just too gonzo. It's too weird. I don't know that the spirit survives. So let this be a weird 60-issue series that real diehard comic book freaks can dive into and find,
Yeah, I think that the ending for for what it is, like it's an effective conclusion with the character that we have had this whole time. We have said the Bugs Bunny thing since really our conversation about Volume 2. We have said Bugs Bunny repeatedly to describe him, and that sort of puckish figure at the end where he gets to be one-upped on the audience as well. Um, I think fits the character and fits the mood that they were trying to do for the series. But Keith, I agree with you in terms of like, is that necessarily the best payoff for the whole series? I
Right.
don't know. I don't know. If you don't like it, you could just end one issue earlier and just like say that he died.
I also like, especially on my reread of the series, there's a point early on where I decided that I was going to view Transmetropolitan as not a literal portrayal of itself, right? Like, it's so out there and so exaggerated that there's an interesting exercise in reading Transmetropolitan as if Spider himself is an unreliable narrator, right? And that the imagery, the consumerism are amped up to 13 because that's the way Spider would tell the story through his misanthropy, right? Um and I'm not saying that's the intention, is that what you're seeing is not a literal portrayal of the series, but I do think that if you go in thinking of this, the entire thing as being tainted by Spider's particular, like, antisocial, cynical point of view, that you get a very interesting reading out of it.
I mean, it certainly
And
becomes way more gonzo.
yeah, right. I mean, because again, like, it's like reading Hunter S. Thompson's own writing so often was so hyper exaggerated through his own misanthropy. So you read it that way and you go, okay, they're not literally selling piss in soda can bottles. You're not literally buying
Ebola Cola or any of these other ones.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But it's the way that Spider would tell it. And in that way, like, the ending becomes kind of the exaggeration that Spider would want to tell.
In terms of the finale, like I remember when this issue came out, and like it was it was a fun moment for the character. Um, obviously we've got the whole arc leading up to it, and the takedown of the president, I think, is uh like we said before, it's cathartic. It's a fantasy that someone could just single-handedly take a president down, even though there is real world precedent. Like there is comparison with like Nixon, for example. But just the idea that we could have someone in power have their comeuppance is so refreshing. Uh, like it just feels so good. That first
It's almost
59 issues.
quaint to
Well,
think that,
yeah.
like, scandal could bring down a president, right? But you want to believe that. Like you said, it's simultaneously power fantasy and also, like, escapism.
Again, now that we've finished, it is uncomfortable. You know what I mean? And the idea of like, hey, it could be this easy is really tempting. But unfortunately, the real world, we underestimate, or Ellis underestimated the stupidity of Americans. So yeah.
It's really
Yeah.
fucked to say Warren Ellis might have been too optimistic.
Right.
That's dark.
Yeah, but it's true. So why don't we look at what is kind of an awkward thing about the nature of the way they collected the totality of the run here, which is that we have the prose essays from the I Hate It Here book that was released not like before the book was over, but I don't remember where it fell. It's just like it. So like this is the book within the book that Spider did, with accompanied by art pieces by all kinds, like just the whole gamut of like who's who artists on this whole thing. I don't think we need to go over every single essay here. There's
Yeah.
interesting details in terms of like the chronology that they're sort of presenting. They are setting up something of a mapping out to like the run of the story, because these are theoretically the columns that he was writing over the course of the run of the book.
Right.
Um, so I mean, some of these are fun. I find that the funeral scene for the transients is a really interesting one, um, in terms
Hmm.
of establishing the character as being um, sympathetic to it all. Like at the very end, he says that that they all stopped to thank him because he only let 100 of them die. And we talked about like the nature of like him being at the riot, like he wasn't directly intervening and stopping anyone from getting hurt by cops. Like it was ultimately that like his work stopped the majority of people from getting hurt. Like he did the most good by the way that he did it, but it still wasn't, direct action. Like he still was describing violence that he was witness to as opposed to intervening on behalf of the violence.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, they were definitely interesting um to go through those. Uh
I will need to, because I like I said before we started, I actually did not get around to reading the two collections of the prose. So and like the thing is, I think I would very much enjoy it had I pieced together that's what that was, because I liked the couple of individual chapters that were effectively just like a column by Spider, um, circling around a theme. But I was dumb and I didn't.
Yeah, well, and like I said, it's like an awkward way that it's included here because these were published as like separate books, somewhere during the run of the main series. I do also want to shout out the "We live in a monoculture" speech is one that I remember perpetually. It's just one of those ones that stand out where Spider just talks about how like yeah, you go out in any city and you can go and get like in this scenario they're talking about like Long Pig and like all the fictional stores for that, but in the real world it's like yeah, you can go to McDonald's anywhere and like get the exact same meal. Like I
Yeah,
remember being in Rome and getting Domino's pizza. Like
I love the Buddha statue holding the McDonald's burger.
yeah.
It's like wow. There's
Uh,
I will say like there's some really like as this is not a part of the main story, there's some really great art in this.
yeah.
Yeah. It's great art that like a lot of people might not see. You know what I mean? That's the weird thing if you don't read it.
Right, right. So, so that is a little bit of homework for you on
yeah,
this one.
absolutely.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, so these are fun columns. Like we get a few interesting spots. Like for example, when he explains that he now has two assistants, there is a moment there uh, where I think the timing doesn't quite map out correctly to when he actually gets Shannon versus when Vita gets killed. Um, but it's still there's interesting prose columns in here that especially coming from the perspective of having just reread the whole series a whole bunch of times for this, seeing how these columns like the story that they're telling by way of having a bunch of columns and like being able to infer like oh this happened roughly around this issue here versus this issue here is sort of a fun aside, but like it's mostly an excuse for like really good art and like some additional world building details about the universe of Transmetropolitan.
Yeah. No, I really liked it. I thought it was an interesting like addendum. Yeah.
Yes. Like I said, it's awkward that it's positioned just at the end of the book. Like if you're reading it in the revised trades collection that they present on the DC Universe app, it's like it's fine to read it last, but it's just a weird order thing. It like, and I get why they didn't want to like interrupt the flow because like if you're reading it in the volumes, this doesn't necessarily correspond. Like I'm guessing the I hate it here because it's I hate it here and then what is it?
Filth of the City.
Filth of the City. Like I hate it here like must have corresponded to like X date when it was published, but it doesn't like the columns don't match up because it's already a collection of columns from a previous point in the story. So I get why it's at the end, but it is like kind of just like an awkward insert there because you're like yeah I finished Transmetropolitan, oh here's some supplemental material.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially after that very definitive ending.
Yes.
Like I think that's a part of the reason why I didn't really bother reading those two, because I was like I'm good, and I'm kind of against more Transmetropolitan a bit. Like I
Right.
kind of this is it. This is the thing, and I don't want Transmetropolitan 2, Transmetropolitan Origins, Transmetropolitan the series. Like I'm good, you know. And this kind of felt like I didn't know how long after the publication of the original series these were made. but I could tell it was extra features. So
Yeah, it wasn't after but it was extra features that were just like published
gotcha.
concurrently.
That's less blasphemous.
Yeah. All right. So we have finally come to the end of our story. Keith, how are you feeling about the overall experience here?
Worthwhile experience. I'm glad we did it. I enjoyed quite a bit about it. I'm gonna take away a lot too, like a lot of really good memories of the book. Um, Obviously, if you listen to the other episodes, there's moments that I was like, ugh. But overall, I think I really enjoyed it. I thought it was very well done. And yeah, I think, like we said, it's a complete narrative. I think it does wrap up. I I'm the most positive comic book reviewer on the planet. Like I never really crap on anything. But um, that's not me just being nice. I liked it. It was fun. I love well, I guess I should say episode 1, my thesis statement was basically like I can tell the parallels to where we're at right now, but also the fact that journalism is one of the most important things to me. So this scratched both of those itches. So yeah, it did really well. Yeah.
Nice. Nice. Now, Derek, you have joined us because you did a reread of this whole thing. How was your experience of this whole ride?
So, look, there's elements of it that don't age well, right? Like, I'm sure that got touched on through earlier episodes. There are, I can be pretty forgiving of and still at times even enjoy like some dumb edgelord stuff. I'm not as bothered. Obviously, by now, Warren Ellis has received his fair share of deserved criticism, over his relationships with women. But like I'm capable of sitting down and going like, all right, let me see what this comic's got in store for me. And I mostly had a good time, but I did have to constantly be like, this bit didn't age well, right? Like,
Mhm.
the the titties, the long pig, the two-headed cat pissing on things, all that's fine. It's mostly like there's some language, right? There's some language that's really not acceptable anymore. That was really like broadly considered less offensive at the time. The thing is, like, I think that all of the stuff that made me go ugh, was pretty easy to move past in the grand scheme of things because it was so like few and far between, and so like easy to isolate and like cordon off from the rest of what I'm reading. But like I have sort of a nostalgia for really the biggest thing is there's a nostalgia for feeling that way about journalism. That journalism's like important and journalism will save us. And I have to admit, like my experiences working in local news really brought a lot of cynicism to me on that front. Heartbreaking as that is to say, I left a lot of my love for the Fourth Estate behind when I left the industry.
Right.
And, there's this little part of me that still wants the Aaron Sorkin moment, though. And this was what if one mad bastard of a journalist could change everything just by speaking truth to power mean enough. And I think that acid is cathartic. I think cathartic is the word we've used a couple of times, and I think it's the best word possible. It's cathartic to read and feel like maybe, just maybe, if we do it right, this could matter in real life too.
Yeah, I think that's a really good description of the series and of this whole endeavor.
Not to ignore that there's just a lot of fun in reading the series. Like Spider and Shannon and Yelena are a great trio of characters that are a lot of fun to read. The hijinks are good. The crazy capers and the shit that they pull off to score a story and pin some motherfucker to the wall. It's good drama.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun doing this reread. As I've mentioned, I've ended up rereading this a bunch of times because I just started and then reread it when we started, and then I've periodically just been like, oh, I guess I'll just finish the series again, as we've done rereads throughout this whole thing. Um, so it's been really cool coming back to it and experiencing it and seeing like the warts and all of the series, like the limitations of the creative team at the time, like we're talking about guys in their 20s, like venting about politics in the world, and like there's an optimism to the nihilism that is going on with this all that is just a different kind of feeling than you can muster in your 40s. Like it's just yeah. But it's a lot of fun, and I'm really glad that I did this journey, Keith. I'm really glad that you and I were able to look at this together.
Yeah, definitely. It's being this is the first time I've read it, like it's been a ride, definitely.
Yeah. So we've got one more installment of this. We're going to do a series wrap up with Derek Robertson. So that is going to be really cool. The I'm going to be extremely delirious when we do this recording because we are on the precipice of my second child being born. So that is just weird timing on all that on that front. But I am so glad that we got to go through this whole series. Derek, I'm so glad that you were here to chat about it. Keith, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you want to cover before we wrap this up?
I think there's something okay, I said I didn't want to talk about it unless I had, something to say. I said it before the show. But I just noticed something. So in the last scene, Shannon specifically says when Yelena walks away, she thinks I don't know what they do when I'm not around.
Yes.
And that I think leans into my thought, my theory, and I'll just drop it out there, that I think in that shot Yelena's very early on in her pregnancy. Because it's speculated online. I just checked. Like, there's
It could
speculation
be.
about that.
I thought she
So,
was just a little thick,
yeah,
but
no, don't get me wrong, but like, yeah, no, I was sitting here looking at it, and I'm like, there's people being like, no, that's pretty much accepted canon by a lot of people, and I'm like, interesting. But I just wanted to, because we talked about it, I wanted to make sure to address that. Other than that, no, I don't have anything else to talk about. Again, I loved the characters. I think it's been a lot of fun, and yeah, more cyberpunk for me always. I love cyberpunk, so.
Yeah. Yeah. No, okay, awesome. Yeah, so just a dope series and a dope time reading along on this whole thing. Um, so on that note, Derek, where can people find you and follow you? What have you got going on?
got a few
Thank you
things going on.
for being here, man.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for having me. As always, always a blast. So you can find me out on the open interwebs on Blue Sky, derekvandyke.bsky.social. I'm on a couple of podcasts of my own. I've been running Castle Bravo, a Godzillaverse retrospective, for a while. Case, you've been on a couple episodes of that, maybe on more episodes coming up, possibly. Some other CPOV hosts have been on the show as well. It's a fantastic very very funny but like historic look at how Godzilla grew as a franchise and kind of the context behind the progression of that as a film series. Also, by the time this episode posts, I should have my new show out, Pixel Spectrum, which is a new gaming focused show from me. Very like conversational interview format. I'm kind of at this point trying to keep it as more focused on like the conversations I have with guests than trying to be specifically like a topical news podcast like people have been used to be doing in the gaming space up until now. But yeah, so you can find me on Blue Sky. You can also listen to Castle Bravo and Pixel Spectrum on whatever podcast app you enjoy using.
Keith, how about you? Where can people find you and follow you?
Yeah, well, I am the host of Weekly Comic Book Review Podcast. We have issues on the Certain POV network, so that's the best place to check out what I'm working on. The best place to get that information is on Blue Sky at wehaveissues.bsky.social. You can also follow me at keithhasissues.bsky.social personally. And on Instagram, we have issues pod because someone stole my name. Other than that, the best place to find me right now is on the Discord because I am on there every day. And I think Case is going to tell you a little bit more about it in a moment.
Yeah, the CPOV Discord is a great place to come interact with us. You can find a link in our show notes or on the website, certainpov.com. Uh, like, as Keith said, just a great place to interact with all three of us, frankly. We are all pretty frequent people in the Discord server, and it is a good old time. Otherwise, if you want to find me and you don't want to do the Discord thing, you can find me on most social media platforms at Case Aiken, with the exception of Instagram, where I'm holding on for dear life to my AIM screen name from high school, which is Quetzalcoatl5, Quetzalcoatl5. Because I was a pretentious nerd in high school, as evidenced by the fact that I was obsessed with Transmetropolitan in high school. There we go. You can support the show by checking out the Patreon for the network. So if you even if you just support at the free tier, it's just awesome having people signed up for the Patreon. I do 2 essays a week, one on a nerdy topic, one on a D&D topic, and you can find that at patreon.com/certainpovmedia. But if you contribute at a paid tier, we'll appreciate you even more. And if you contribute at the executive producer level, you get a shout out at the end of our podcast. And so I want to thank a couple of people, which includes Micah McCaw, Carter Hallett, Sean Muir, Lee Gregor, Memento Young, Logan Crowley, Joe Mastropiero, Casey and Nancy Aiken, Adam Samter, and Keith Latinen.
Yay.
If you want to be awesome like them, you can join at the executive producer level and you will get shout outs. But otherwise, like I said, even at the free tier, we still appreciate you and we're putting out good value. So check out that Patreon. Otherwise, like I said, we've got one more episode of this where we're going to talk about the series as a whole now that Keith has actually read it, which is a big step forward in our conversations that we can possibly have.
Yes.
And we will be doing that with one of the creators of the book. So tune in next time for that. Derek, again, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Keith, thank you for this journey.
Of course, sir. Anytime.
This has been The Word from Tomorrow. Have a great week.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.